Hello, I'm Rebecca Ray, and it's a pleasure to welcome you to this edition of Off the Shelf. This is our book discussion series hosted by the Conference Board, where I have the privilege of serving as the Human Capital Center lead. Now, today I have the great privilege of sitting down with Annie McKee to discuss her very latest book, How to Be Happy at Work. Dr. Annie McKee is a best-selling author, a respected academic, and a speaker and advisor to top global leaders. She's the senior fellow at the University of Pennsylvania's Graduate School of Education, where she leads and teaches at the Penn CLO Executive Doctoral Program. That's how Annie McKee and I met. As coach to executive in Fortune or FTSE 500 companies and organizations around the globe, Annie uses a person-centered approach to help leaders develop their emotional intelligence, enhance their strategic thinking abilities, and build resonant cultures. So this is her newest and most provocative thinking on how each one of us can create better, more humane, and more compassionate workplaces. The title of her brand new book is How to Be Happy at Work, The Power of Purpose, Hope, and Friendship from Harvard Business Review Press. It's a follow-on to some of the work that you may also know of Annie's, where she partnered with Daniel Goleman and Richard Boyatzis in the landmark book Primal Leadership. Continued that with Resonant Leadership with Richard Boyatzis. A variety of books and articles and publications have followed. It's just a terrific opportunity for us to spend some time with this thought leader in our profession. So, Annie, let me start with sort of the core principles of the book itself, which is a terrific read. And, I'm wondering if you might characterize just a little bit about your thoughts on happiness in the workplace. Because I know that a lot of us are talking about engagement and we're talking about feelings of belonging and inclusion. And how do you see happiness in the workplace?
That's such a great question, Rebecca. I actually think happiness is essential at work. And quite honestly, as you know, Rebecca, I've spent my life studying leadership and working with leaders all over the world. And honestly, the last thing I thought I'd do is write a book about happiness at work. But as I traveled the world and worked with people in businesses, in governments, and various institutions, it became increasingly clear to me that when people are happy, when they are feeling fulfilled and excited and hopeful, and when their relationships are really powerful, we're better at our jobs. We're actually better. And when I looked at the science behind that, because I think that's really important to look at the science behind these things, these ideas we have, intuition, whatever it is, I found that the science backs it up. When our brains are in, what some scientists call the positive emotional register, when we're happy, when we're excited, when we're enthused and optimistic, our brains function better. We take in more information, we process it faster, we make better decisions. And when we're in the opposite end of that spectrum, when we're in sort of a negative spiral, angry, frustrated, cynical, fearful even, our brains shut down and we are not as good as we could be. So yes, belonging is important, engagement is important, and they are all part of feeling fulfilled and happy at work. So Annie, I think that's an interesting point that you've just made about when we're happier, we're better at our job. So it really does link to the critical element of workplace performance, doesn't it? It does. This is not a so-called soft topic. In fact, I don't even like that phrase soft skills anymore. I don't use it anymore because really what we're talking about are human skills and human emotions that truly impact what we think, how we think, and what we do. So there is a definite link, and research shows it, a definite link between happiness and success. And as one of our colleagues, Sean Aker, mentions in his work, happiness actually comes before success. So for those of our listeners who are waiting for that raise or that bonus or that, new home or that new job or whatever it is to be happy, will be happy when, that's not how it works. Our happiness, our contentment, our fulfillment, our sense of optimism about the future actually drive us toward success.
I'm just thinking about that in a larger context. So if you think about happiness as you've just described it, sort of on a personal level, and imagine if we could get organizations filled with happier people who are collectively doing a better job and who are collectively raising the effectiveness level of that organization and fulfilling its purpose and its mission, that almost starts to look like a workplace nirvana, doesn't it?
It does look like workplace nirvana. And Rebecca, I don't know if you've ever worked in a job or in an organization where you or lots of people around you were miserable, but I have. And I feel really fortunate that I'm not in that situation now. And I know not only from the research and from working with leaders, but from my own experience, when we're in an organization that is toxic, when we have toxic relationships, when we're feeling scared or angry or all those things, when we're not happy, when we're miserable, it is a terrible way to live, and it spills over into our personal lives. It has a dramatic effect on our professional success for sure, but it also spills over into our personal lives. So yes, if we could move toward focusing on creating climates, a resonant microculture around each one of us where people feel respected and as if they do belong, and true inclusiveness, not just something that's used as a buzzword. When we're building relationships that are warm and trusting and providing dignity to people for what they do every single day in our workplaces, yes, we're going to get better performance out of ourselves and other people. And yes, it's going to feel better. And yes, we're going to be happier at work and in our personal lives.
No, I think that's critically important. And I want to get into some of the findings in just a moment, about the three things that, are the essential elements for happiness. But before I do, could you speak just a little bit to the way in which you've managed to take this research-based and very centered work and yet make it so very readable? So can you talk a little bit about the research process and sort of, how you arrived at a lot of this?
Another great question. Well, as I said, I do a lot of work in leadership and organizational culture. And as it happened, I spent a number of years with my team just a few years back, literally traveling the world, doing an awful lot of studies of organizational cultures and leadership practices. It was in particular companies for each particular company. And yes, we were able to provide some insights and help move people toward better management, better leadership, more productive, healthy cultures. But I had a nagging feeling that we were missing something. And in this research that we had done, we interviewed thousands of people. We interviewed directly, we taught other people how to do it, and we used a particular process that allowed people to really tell us the truth in confidential settings about what was going on. So I went back and I read and reread and looked at as many of those interviews as I could. Now, mind you, some of them were in Zulu or Cambodian or languages that, hadn't been translated to English. So I stuck to the ones that had been translated, but there were a lot of them. And I asked the question, what are we missing? What are we missing? And what I found was that people were crying out for happiness at work. They said, I want to love my job. I want to be happy when I get up in the morning. I want to be excited to come to work. And when I am, I know I do a better job. So that really set me on the course of digging into the psychology research and some of the management research and some of the leadership research to ask the question, what is happiness at work and why is it so important?
Annie, as I listen to you talk about this, and, we're really talking about a global snapshot here. And it's really important, I think, to underscore these are the feelings and the thoughts of leaders who are thinking about how they impact the work in the workplace. But we also are talking about it on an individual basis. I think it's part of that very human desire to be part of something important, to be happy. I don't think anyone comes into the workplace saying, how can I really mess up today? I think people want to do good things and they want to be part of something terrific. And sometimes organizations and teams and leaders just don't set in motion the kind of environment that can lead to that.
You're exactly right. It's both individual and collective or cultural. we each have to know what fulfills us, what gives us a sense of purpose. Because, Rebecca, a sense of purpose is core to happiness in the workplace. We need to feel as if we're making a difference, as if we're having impact on something or someone that we care about. It could be our business, could be our customers, it could be our colleagues. We need to feel that what we do matters. And a lot of times in the press of daily work and in, the stress and pressures that we all live with, that gets lost. We forget why we took the job. We forget that we actually do care about the mission of our organization. We're just so nose down, to the grindstone that we actually forget to look up and think about why we're doing what we're doing. And just that act can make us feel a little bit better about what we're doing in the workplace.
Absolutely. And that touches on the first of the three essential elements that you identified in your research are critical for people to feel happy at work. Can you speak more about those three, purpose and hope and friendships?
Yeah, Rebecca, I really tried to look for kind of a practical approach in talking about this topic and in writing about this topic. I mean, you can read the philosophers and the religious scholars. People have been talking about and writing about happiness for thousands of years, probably longer, right? Mm-hmm. And yet I wanted to go after something that was really specific and very, very practical that would help me and other people in the workplace help us to understand what we can do to ensure that not only are we happier and more fulfilled at work, but that others are too. And so I went back to my own research with, the many people that we talked to around the world and looked again at those interviews. And I talked to quite a lot of other people as well and said, what does it take for you to feel happy at work? And I arrived at three very practical things that we all seem to need. And it doesn't matter where we live either. A sense of purpose, a sense that we can live our values at work, at least some of our values, and that we will and can have positive impact, that we can make a difference. That's number one, a sense of purpose. Number two, we need hope. We need to feel optimistic about ourselves and our careers, about where we're going in our lives and how our work contributes to that. We need to feel hopeful about what we're learning. And that's so important these days because as workplaces change, as you know, with literally the tidal wave of change that's coming with technology, AI and robotics, etc., we have to keep learning. So isn't that wonderful? One of the things that makes us happy, learning, mastery, constantly seeking to be better at the new, to innovate, that actually gives us a sense of hope, which is critical to our feelings about our workplace and our happiness at work. And then finally, I talk about friendships, and people often say, oh no, you can't be friends with people at work. But I disagree. I think that, in fact, we do have friends at work. Look how many hours we spend in the workplace, right? 8, 10, sometimes more hours a day. Let's hope we've got friendly relationships. Let's hope we've got people we can talk to. Let's hope we've got people that we don't have to put the game face on every minute of the day. And what I found was when we have friendly relationships, trusting, respectful, open, caring, all of those things, we can build relationships that help everybody get things done. And Rebecca, we don't need to go on vacation with each other, and we don't even need to go out to dinner with each other. That's not what I'm talking about when I'm talking about workplace friendships. I'm talking about the kind of relationships that you have with people you like and trust and with people that you share goals with. That is what we need in order to feel happy at work.
I'm so pleased to maybe hear that last part about friendships, because I do think many people are sort of conditioned to think that they don't have those. But if you think about it as these are the people with whom I'm going to go through pivotal, critical experiences that are important not only to my company, but to my own professional life and my own well-being. You want to hope that you have people that you can trust and that you can confide in and who can tell you sometimes things that are difficult to hear, but you can hear it because you trust them and you trust the source of that feedback. And that's what I think all of us look to try to find or foster in any working relationship.
I couldn't agree with you more. We need those kind of relationships, and it takes a little bit of effort to build them because, again, they're not necessarily encouraged. There's an old myth, as I said, that you're not supposed to be friends with the people at work because you can't be objective and all of that. Well, actually, you can be objective, and it's just as you said, Rebecca, when we've got relationships that are founded on trust and caring, we can have the difficult conversations much more easily and in a much more fruitful manner than when we're trying to cross a boundary where there is no trust and where people are, frankly, afraid of one another.
No, I think that's so right on. We're going to take a short break for some quick announcements, and we'll be right back.
Looking for additional insights beyond this podcast? The Conference Board hosts an array of annual seminars and conferences on a wide selection of topics, ranging from engagement to strategic HR, talent management, leadership, and diversity and inclusion. Learn best practices from top companies and hear insights from renowned practitioners and thought leaders, all while having the opportunity to network and collaborate with your peers. For a complete list of our upcoming programs, you can visit us at www.conferenceboard.org/events. And as an added thank you for listening to this program, use code POD300 to save $300 off your registration. That's POD 300. Seats fill up quickly, so visit our website and reserve your spot today.
Hello, and welcome back to our conversation with Annie McKee, the author of the brand new book, How to Be Happy at Work. Annie, when you think about some of the things, though, that maybe can be obstacles to finding happiness in the workplace, and, I know you spend some time talking about some of those happiness traps and the ways in which, the skills that you and Daniel Goleman and others have, so successfully articulated in the marketplace for some time now. Can you talk a little bit about the application of emotional intelligence to overcoming or avoiding some of those traps?
Oh, that's a great question, too. Well, when you ask people, why aren't you happy at work? A lot of people will first point outside themselves. It's that terrible boss. My culture is toxic. I don't really like many of the tasks in the job. And, honestly, there's always a grain or more than a grain of truth in those conversations. And yes, we've got to get better at leading with emotional intelligence. Yes, we've got to create more resonant cultures. And yes, we've got to make sure that the person-job fit is really good. All of those things matter. But what can we really do today? What can we do right this minute to be happier in the workplace? We can look at ourselves and ask ourselves, am I getting in my own way? And I again went back to, people. I talked to people, looked at these interviews and asked the question, how do we get in our own way when it comes to happiness at work? And I found 5 different happiness traps. A couple of them I'll highlight now. One of them is what I call the overwork trap. And frankly, I think an awful lot of us are really susceptible to this one. Overwork is just what it sounds like. It's working too much. We carry our work in our pockets. We put it on our bedside table when we go to sleep. And how many of us wake up in the night and flip that phone over and check to see if there's an email? It's not good for us. It's just not good for us. And, here's the thing. For those of us who really love our work, we're the worst offenders. We're the most susceptible to the overwork trap because we just love it so much. But here's the thing. Nobody can work long, long hours every day, day in, day out, week after week, month after month, year after year, and not burn out. We burn out. For some of us, it takes a really long time. For other of us, we get a wake-up call along the way. Hopefully, it's not a bad wake-up call, like a broken relationship or an illness. But I really would encourage people, look at that particular trap. What can we do to put some boundaries around work? Yeah, love your job. Work hard. There's nothing wrong with working hard. But we've got to make sure that we build in time for other aspects of life and for renewal if we're going to be truly happy in a sustainable fashion, not only at work, but in life. The other trap that I looked at that I'll mention here today, Rebecca, is an interesting one because it doesn't sound like a trap. Overwork is obvious, right? We've got to watch out for that.
Right.
But the ambition trap is not so obvious because ambition's great, right? It gets us out of bed. It has us reach for the gold. It has us, really try to excel and be our best. And all of those things are wonderful. Probably a lot of our listeners thrive on ambition, and I would encourage everyone to keep doing so. Here's the thing, though. Any good thing, when taken to an extreme, becomes a problem, including ambition. And what I've seen, my personal experience, coaching leaders, working one-on-one, working with top teams, is that it is far too common for people to find themselves in a position 10, 20, 30 years into their career of having been going for goal after goal after goal, grabbing that brass ring, getting the goal, right? Getting there.
Sure.
Not enjoying it very much. Sometimes not at all, and then off to the next one. Ends up looking like a hamster wheel. It's not satisfying, doesn't fulfill us after a while, and it certainly doesn't lead to happiness. So we've got to temper our ambition with an understanding of what's important to us on the journey, what's important to us on the way to getting that goal, and how can we enrich our own lives and other people's lives as we're going there, as we're getting to it, and then learn how to celebrate and not just go from one goal to the next.
No, I think that's right. And I think your point about overwork is so well taken. I mean, you can just take a look at headlines, and there's certainly enough of them talking about burnout, but also sometimes death by overwork. And there are some cultures where, it's a serious, serious problem.
It is a very serious problem globally. I, too, was just reading a couple of articles, and it's a serious problem whether you're talking about the United States or China or Korea or some of the European countries. We actually need to start paying attention to this because it's not just sort of the slow, insidious, stress-related diseases like heart disease and that sort of thing that have been taking people out for decades anymore. Stress and burnout are impacting us much sooner and much more vehemently at a much younger age. And I think we really need to take a look at this, because if we need our organizations, let's just get practical from a business perspective for a second. If we need our organizations to be constantly innovating, constantly moving to the future, ensuring that every person is able to give his or her best, then we've got to ensure that every person is healthy. And we're not doing a very good job of that right now.
Well, I think you're right. I think also that's going to lead right into my next question is, those of us who lead others have to be thoughtful about what messages we send, the kinds of things that we do or fail to do, that create these environments where people feel as though they do have to overwork, or they can't be their full selves at work, or a variety of other things. And I'm going to ask Annie, what is it that managers can do to start building healthy workplaces?
You asked about emotional intelligence and the work that Dan Goleman and Richard Boyatzis and I have done over the years. And, Rebecca, it really starts with that. And it not only starts with the big thing called emotional intelligence, it starts with self-awareness. Recognizing what drives us as managers or leaders, what are our trigger points, what gets us angry or stressed, and then learning how to read other people. What kind of impact are we having on people? Is my bad morning having a terrible impact on 7 or 8 other people around me? Well, guess what? Those 7 or 8 other people are going to have a bad morning too, and maybe a bad day, because I'm their boss. And we've got to recognize that our emotions are highly contagious, person to person, and particularly from a manager to an employee, or a leader to many employees if you happen to run a big business. Our moods matter. So understanding that, a healthy climate starts with us, and to understand how to bring that about, we've got to understand ourselves. Know yourself, understand your triggers, understand what your values are, make sure you're living them, and then lean into optimism, lean into hope, make sure you connect people with purpose on a daily basis, not just every once in a while when you talk about the mission of the organization, but daily around the small tasks. That allows you to create a resonant environment, a resonant microculture around you. And if you're fortunate enough to be in a very powerful position, you can extend that culture out to many, many people, and you and your organization and your people are going to be better off for it.
Yeah, no, I think that's exactly right. And I think, in some of the work that I've done with leaders and trying to develop them, I remember one comment one time when a woman said, "I don't have the luxury of a bad day." And, she talked about the conscious decisions she made to remove herself from situations where she might be, her attitude might be infectious, and think consciously about what to do. It didn't happen often, but she was very aware that when it did, she didn't have that luxury. So I think you're onto something.
Yeah, and on that point, Rebecca, if for those of us who know that our emotions are contagious and we don't feel we have the luxury of a bad day, remember, people can smell a lie a mile away, and if you're just putting the game face on, they will know it. What we have to do is truly learn to shift our mindset, our attitude, and our emotions from negative to positive. And that takes practice, that takes time, and that takes a willingness to commit to taking care of oneself at work and outside of work.
Without question. Now, Annie, I know you and I have known each other for a while, and I know the long track record of contribution to the profession through the work that you've done and here. And I guess I have to ask, what's next? What's the next element of this that you build on, or what's the new and exciting area that you think you want to focus on for the next contribution? Where's your head now?
That's such a good question. For a long time, I've been focusing on both leadership and culture. But if I had to look on balance, what have I focused more time and attention on? It's been the individual leader and his or her ability to develop emotional intelligence, use their emotional intelligence, and create an environment where people can be their best. I'm really excited about looking at what we can really do to create those environments, to create resonant cultures, and to make sure that they extend beyond the boundaries of our little teams, right? Mm-hmm. And I'm really excited about this because I think ultimately we've got to shift the climate in our organizations from short-term orientation to long-term orientation while holding on to our ability to innovate quickly. We've got to move from driving people as if they're machines, literally, to recognizing we're dealing with human beings and how do we inspire them? How do we create a culture that inspires them? So I'm really excited about looking at that level. What can we do to get rid of the old in terms of organizational cultures that are far outdated, not 10 years, not 20, but 100 years. 100 years outdated. What can we do to create organizational cultures that fit the organization of today and the future?
I couldn't agree more. I'm fascinated by engagement, inclusion, and culture. And that's, I think, where the nexus is, and that's where the contribution for all of us as leaders is going to continue to be. So, Annie,
I agree.
This time has just flown by. I am so appreciative that you would take some time to articulate the highlights of the book. I'm going to encourage everyone to run out and buy this. It's a Harvard Business Review Press book, and it's a great read that you can take away the insights with a great deal of confidence because of the research base. So I just want to thank you, Annie, for coming and sharing, and all of the folks who've tuned in today. And this is part of an ongoing series, and you've set a bar now, Annie, where other people are going to have to step way up. But I hope everyone will continue to look for the insights that come from great thinkers like Annie McKee. So thank you, Annie.
Thank you so much, Rebecca. It's great to talk to you again.
You bet.